There comes a moment in life when a woman must look at herself in the mirror and ask, who am I apart from the man beside me? That is the defining question. Because the most dangerous thing you can ever do is give another person the authority to define your worth. When you hand over your identity, you lose the essence of who you were created to be. Listen carefully. No man can complete you. Completion was placed in you before you ever entered a relationship. You were created whole. When you attach your entire being to another human, you risk becoming a shadow of yourself. And when the shadow leaves, you feel empty. But emptiness is not the truth about you. It is the result of building your soul on another person's foundation. Do not give up your emotional strength just to feel validated. Attention is not the same as love. Validation is not the same as value. A woman who knows her worth does not beg for recognition. She carries herself with such clarity of purpose that even silence speaks for her. When you trade peace for approval, you are selling your destiny too cheaply. If you ever find yourself in a place where your spirit is starved, pay attention. Any relationship that suffocates your vision, diminishes your voice, or makes you forget the greatness God placed inside you, that relationship is costing you too much. You are not called to shrink, you are called to expand. And when love becomes a cage, it is no longer love, it is bondage. Never confuse love with possession. Love gives, possession controls. Love empowers, possession manipulates. And when you confuse the two, you stay longer than you should, you accept less than you deserve, and you silence the very strength God intended you to express. True love honors your individuality. It allows you to grow. It never demands that you abandon your identity to preserve its comfort. So, when it is time to walk away without bitterness. Detachment is not weakness. Detachment is wisdom. It is the declaration that your destiny is too sacred to be sacrificed on the altar of someone else's insecurity. To love without losing yourself is power. To walk away without resentment is freedom. And to know that your worth is untouched, no matter who stays or who leaves, that is divine strength. To never attach your identity to a man is not merely advice about relationships. It is a principle that governs the very core of your being. Every woman must understand that her essence, her value, and her destiny were determined long before she ever encountered another person. You were born complete, created with divine intention, and stamped with purpose from the moment of your existence. To tie your identity to another person, no matter how significant he may seem in your life, is to strip yourself of the divine individuality that was breathed into you by God himself. When a woman attaches her identity to a man, she makes the mistake of believing that her worth is somehow dependent on his approval, his presence, or his validation. This is the root of insecurity. When your reflection of self is built on someone else's opinion, you begin to bend and twist yourself to fit what they want, rather than standing firmly in who you are. You become vulnerable not in a healthy way, but in a destructive way, because the person you are trying to please becomes the source of your significance. If that source withdraws, criticizes, or abandons you, then suddenly your self-worth collapses with it. But identity that is anchored in God cannot be shaken by human inconsistency. A man can enhance your life, but he cannot define it. He may walk beside you, but he cannot determine the direction of your calling. He may encourage you, but he cannot provide the foundation of your strength. To depend on him for identity is to place a weight on him that he was never designed to carry, and it is to build your house upon sand rather than stone. The moment the storm of betrayal, disappointment, or change comes, the identity that was built on him crumbles. This is why so many women lose themselves in relationships. They have confused partnership with identity and affection with destiny. To attach your identity to a man is also to reduce your divine uniqueness to a role that serves someone else's narrative. You were not created to simply orbit around another person's life. You are a universe in yourself, filled with dreams, vision, and purpose. When you let a man become the center of who you are, you shrink the vastness of your own calling to fit into the confines of his approval. That is why so many women silence their voice, suppress their gifts, and bury their talents, all in the name of keeping a relationship alive. But the tragedy is this: what you bury does not die. It waits. It waits in frustration. It waits in silence. It waits until you recognize that you were never meant to be defined by someone else's shadow. Every woman must learn the strength of standing alone, not because she rejects love, but because she refuses to be swallowed by it. The foundation of identity must be built before love arrives, so that when love comes, it enhances what is already there rather than replacing it. A woman who knows herself will not beg for validation. She will not allow her self-esteem to rise and fall with a man's moods, choices, or inconsistencies. She will stand as a whole being, able to give love without losing herself and able to walk away without being shattered. When you attach your identity to a man, you unknowingly place your life on a fragile foundation. If he praises you, you feel worthy. If he ignores you, you feel invisible. If he accepts you, you glow with confidence. If he rejects you, you crumble with despair. This is a dangerous way to live because it makes your emotional stability completely dependent on another person's behavior. And no human being was designed to sustain that level of responsibility. That is why so many relationships end with devastation. The woman gave away her identity and has nothing left to stand on when the man walks away. There is divine wisdom in understanding that your identity is not negotiable. It cannot be handed over, bartered, or diminished. A woman must learn to say, I know who I am with or without you. This is not arrogance. This is spiritual clarity. It is a declaration that you belong to a higher calling, and no man's presence or absence can change that. When you carry this awareness, you enter relationships with confidence rather than desperation. You give from overflow rather than emptiness. You love without clinging, and you remain whole even in the face of loss. The truth is, many women attach their identity to a man because they fear emptiness. They fear that without him, they are not enough. But the fear of being alone is often a symptom of forgetting the power you already possess. Loneliness is not the absence of a man. Loneliness is the absence of self. When you discover the fullness of who you are, solitude becomes strength rather than weakness. You stop seeing yourself as incomplete and begin to recognize that companionship is a blessing, not a definition. Do not confuse partnership with identity. A healthy partnership is two whole individuals walking side by side, not two incomplete souls clinging to each other out of desperation. When you are whole, you are not afraid to let go of what no longer aligns with your destiny. You are not afraid to say no to what does not honor your value. And you are not afraid to walk in the fullness of your calling, even if others misunderstand or reject it. Identity gives you the courage to stand tall, even when relationships fall apart. The woman who attaches her identity to a man often sacrifices her dreams for his. She forgets her own vision in order to support his. She abandons her own voice so his can be heard. And while there is beauty in sacrifice, there is tragedy in erasure. If love requires that you disappear in order to maintain it, then it is not love at all. Real love will not ask you to deny who you are. It will celebrate who you are. It will make room for your gifts, your purpose, and your individuality. Anything less than that is not worthy of your identity. A woman who understands this principle does not fear losing a man because she knows she cannot lose herself. She does not tolerate disrespect because she knows her value cannot be diminished by rejection. She does not allow herself to be manipulated because her identity is rooted in something eternal, not circumstantial. She walks with dignity, speaks with clarity, and loves with freedom. She knows that her life has meaning beyond romance, and her destiny has weight beyond companionship. To never attach your identity to a man is to guard the treasure of your being. It is to protect the sacredness of who you are. It is to recognize that you were designed with a purpose that no relationship can add to or subtract from. When you understand this, you no longer fear abandonment, because abandonment cannot erase destiny. You no longer chase validation, because validation cannot increase worth. And you no longer cling desperately to love, because love is no longer your source of identity. It is simply an expression of the wholeness you already possess. To not trade emotional strength for validation is one of the most important lessons a woman can ever learn in her journey toward true inner freedom. Validation has become one of the greatest traps in relationships, because the desire to be seen, heard, and loved is deeply human. Yet when this desire is twisted into dependency, it becomes a chain that binds the soul. The search for validation can cause a woman to abandon her strength, silence her instincts, and compromise her dignity, all in the hope of receiving approval from a man who may or may not even value her essence. What is overlooked is that emotional strength is one of the greatest treasures you possess. And once you trade it for validation, you end up bankrupt in spirit while still starving for the very affirmation you sacrificed yourself to obtain. Emotional strength is not coldness. It is not the absence of vulnerability. It is the ability to remain anchored when emotions fluctuate, when circumstances shift, and when people disappoint. It is that deep inner resolve that allows you to stay true to yourself, regardless of how others respond to you. When you trade this strength for validation, you put yourself in a place where your stability depends entirely on the recognition of another person. A smile from him uplifts you, but his silence destroys you. A word of approval makes you feel alive, but his indifference makes you question your worth. That is a dangerous cycle, because it trains you to rely on his opinion more than your own conviction. Validation is fleeting. It is inconsistent. It is fragile. People give it and withhold it based on their moods, their insecurities, or their intentions. If you allow that fragile supply to become your source of identity, then you are left at the mercy of forces you cannot control. But emotional strength reminds you that your worth is not up for debate. It cannot be handed out in compliments, and it cannot be taken away in criticism. It exists as an unshakable truth. To trade that truth for a temporary nod of approval is like exchanging a diamond for a grain of sand. Many women fall into this trap because they confuse validation with love. They believe that being constantly affirmed is the same as being deeply valued. But true love is not about constant flattery. It is about consistent respect, honor, and trust. A man can shower you with words yet not honor your soul. Another can validate your beauty but disregard your mind. If you build your sense of self on the shallow praises of validation, you will constantly feel the need to perform, to adjust, to please, to do whatever is necessary to keep the stream of compliments flowing. You become addicted to external approval, and in that addiction you lose the ability to stand confidently in your own truth without applause. Emotional strength is the quiet confidence that allows you to walk into a room without needing to be noticed. It is the ability to be at peace with yourself, whether or not anyone praises you. It is knowing that silence from others does not mean emptiness within you. When a woman carries this strength, she does not crumble when others fail to affirm her, because she understands that the deepest affirmation has already been written into her being. She was validated by God when He created her with purpose, and no man's words or absence of words can revoke that. The moment you begin trading your emotional strength for validation, you set yourself up for compromise. You start tolerating behaviors that diminish your spirit because you want to keep the little crumbs of recognition He throws your way. You begin to accept disrespect, manipulation, or neglect, all for the sake of maintaining proximity to His approval. This is how destinies are delayed and spirits are crushed, not because the woman lacked value, but because she allowed her craving for validation to overshadow her inner strength. A woman must learn that the need to be wanted must never cost her peace. It is far better to be at peace alone than to be in turmoil while being seen. Peace is the true wealth of the soul, and no amount of validation can substitute for it. Emotional strength preserves that peace by keeping you centered in your own sense of worth, regardless of what others think. Without it, you live in constant emotional turbulence, tossed back and forth by the shifting winds of someone else's attention. Some women fear that if they stop seeking validation, they will appear cold, detached, or unloving. But the opposite is true. A woman rooted in emotional strength actually loves more deeply because her love is not manipulative. It is not given in exchange for recognition. It flows freely from a place of fullness. She does not need a man to constantly remind her that she is valuable because she already knows it. This knowledge allows her to receive affirmation with gratitude, but not depend on it for survival. She is not offended when it is absent, nor is she inflated when it is abundant. She remains steady. The danger of seeking validation is that it gives others power they should never have over you. If a man knows you crave it, he can control you with it. He can withhold it to make you insecure, then give it back to make you grateful. He can use it as a tool of manipulation, knowing that you will bend to his desires just to hear words that confirm your worth. This is why some women stay in toxic relationships far longer than they should, because the cycle of validation, withdrawal, and return becomes addictive. But emotional strength breaks that cycle. It gives you the ability to see through manipulation and walk away from it without hesitation. To not trade your emotional strength for validation is to honor the truth that you are already enough. It is to recognize that compliments may encourage you, but they do not define you. It is to remember that recognition from others is a gift, not a necessity. And it is to stand so firmly in your value that you do not collapse when others fail to see it. When you live from this place, relationships no longer drain you. They become a space where love is exchanged freely rather than traded for self-worth. The most powerful woman is not the one who is constantly praised, but the one who remains unshaken without it. She is steady, centered, and confident. She knows her emotional strength is too precious to sell for the cheap currency of temporary validation. She gives her love freely, but she never gives away her soul in exchange for recognition. She remains whole, whether praised or criticized, noticed or ignored, loved or left. And that wholeness is her true power. To never stay where your spirit is starved is to understand that life is more than existing, more than simply being present in someone else's world while your own world shrinks into silence. The spirit of a woman carries vision, dreams, creativity, and purpose. It carries the fire of destiny, the breath of possibility, and the essence of her true identity. When that spirit is continually ignored, suppressed, or drained, it begins to wither. And when a woman chooses to remain in an environment where her soul is starved, she slowly forgets who she is. She may still smile, still play her role, still show up in the relationship, but inside she becomes a shell of her former self because what makes her alive is no longer being fed. Starvation of the spirit does not always happen loudly. It often happens subtly. It begins with the dismissal of your ideas, a constant undermining of your voice, a consistent belittling of your dreams. Over time, you find yourself questioning whether your desires matter, whether your gifts are worth expressing, whether your voice should even be heard. When your spirit is starved, you adjust downward, shrinking yourself to fit into an environment that cannot handle your fullness. You stop talking about your visions because they are mocked. You stop pursuing your passions because they are ignored. You stop shining as brightly because someone told you your light was too much. The tragedy is not that others starved you. The tragedy is that you stayed and allowed your soul to become malnourished. A healthy relationship should be a place of nourishment. It should be a space where your gifts are recognized, your dreams are encouraged, and your voice is valued. Love does not suffocate, it breathes life. It does not silence, it amplifies. It does not shrink, it expands. But when you find yourself in a place where love feels like a cage rather than a platform, that is the sign that your spirit is being deprived of oxygen. Staying in such a place may feel like loyalty, but in truth it is betrayal. Betrayal of yourself, betrayal of your purpose, and betrayal of the very reason you were created. Many women remain in spirit-starving relationships because of fear. Fear of being alone, fear of starting over, fear of losing the image of love, even if the substance of love is no longer there. Fear convinces you that a starving environment is better than no environment at all. Fear makes you cling to fragments, hoping that one day they will become wholeness. But starvation does not turn into abundance simply because you wait. A tree that is planted in dry, barren soil will not grow no matter how patient you are. If the ground cannot sustain you, no amount of loyalty will make it fertile. There is also the fear of disappointing others. Many women endure environments where their spirits are withering because they do not want to disrupt the comfort of others. They remain silent so as not to disturb peace, even when the peace they are protecting is false. They sacrifice their own fulfillment in order to maintain an image for family, friends, or community. Yet what they do not realize is that protecting appearances while destroying your spirit is the greatest act of self-neglect. No one benefits when you choose to remain small, muted, and broken. The world does not see your true potential, and those connected to you are deprived of the greatness you were meant to release. The spirit is designed to grow. It is designed to stretch, to explore, to create. When you stay where your spirit is starved, you deny that growth. Imagine planting a seed in a pot too small to contain it. At first, the seed may sprout, but eventually the roots will become entangled. The growth will be stunted, and the plant will stop reaching higher. That is what happens when a woman stays in a relationship or environment that cannot nourish her destiny. She grows only to the limits of the pot, but never to the potential of her true design. The soil you choose matters. If it is rich, you flourish. If it is barren, you suffocate. Your destiny is too sacred to be suffocated in starvation. When your spirit is being drained, it shows up in every area of your life. You lose your joy, your energy, your creativity. You start doubting the very things you once felt confident about. You find yourself existing in survival mode, where every day feels like enduring rather than living. And yet, deep down, there is always a whisper, a reminder that you were created for more than this. That whisper is the hunger of your spirit, the cry for nourishment, the pull toward an environment that will allow you to thrive. Nourishment for the spirit comes through environments that honor your individuality, relationships that celebrate your uniqueness, and spaces that encourage your vision. When you are valued, your soul flourishes. When you are supported, your gifts multiply. When you are loved rightly, you expand without fear. A woman in a nourishing environment is radiant. She carries herself with strength. She speaks with confidence. She creates without apology. She loves without depletion. That is the fruit of being planted where the spirit is fed. To choose to leave where your spirit is starved is not weakness, it is wisdom. It is not abandonment, it is survival. It is the recognition that love should not kill what it claims to cherish. If a relationship is demanding the death of your identity, it is no longer love, it is control. If it is silencing your voice, it is no longer intimacy, it is oppression. If it is diminishing your worth, it is no longer partnership, it is imprisonment. And no destiny can be fulfilled in chains. Some women believe that endurance is a sign of strength. And in many ways it is. But endurance in the wrong place is not strength. It is bondage. Strength is not measured by how much you can tolerate, but by how clearly you can recognize when tolerance has become self-destruction. When you stay where your spirit is starved, you are teaching yourself to settle for less than what you were created for. But when you move toward nourishment, you are teaching yourself that your life is worthy of growth, joy, and fulfillment. There is power in refusing to starve. There is power in saying, I will no longer sacrifice my voice for silence, my vision for approval, or my purpose for convenience. There is power in choosing to uproot yourself from barren soil and plant yourself in ground that can sustain you. For every woman who has felt her spirit shrink inside a relationship, know this: you are not crazy for wanting more. You are not selfish for seeking nourishment. You are not disloyal for protecting your own soul. You are simply aligning with the truth that your destiny cannot thrive in starvation. When your spirit is nourished, you rise, you walk differently, you speak differently, you see differently. The world looks brighter because you are living from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. You no longer cling to environments out of fear because you know that your survival depends not on attachment but on alignment. You are not afraid to leave a cage because you know the sky is where you belong, and you will not remain where your spirit is starved because you finally understand that the God who created you did not design you to shrink. He designed you to flourish.